What if your breakdown isn't a punishment, but a preparation? What if the moment that shattered everything was never meant to destroy you, but to awaken you? Most people believe that chaos marks the end of a story, but Carl Jung saw it differently. He believed that when life collapses, it's the unconscious calling you home, pushing you beyond the limits of who you've been so that you can meet who you truly are. The rupture isn't random. It's the first crack through which light can enter. Think of the times life forced you to stop. The job that disappeared overnight, the relationship that unraveled, the sudden sense that what once fit no longer does. In those moments, something ancient stirs within. The ego trembles, trying to rebuild what's familiar, but the soul whispers, "Let it fall." Because only when the outer scaffolding breaks do you finally see the architecture of the self beneath it. Jung called this process individuation, the sacred movement from who you think you are toward who you were always meant to become. The truth is, transformation rarely arrives gently. It does not knock politely on the door. It storms in, scattering plans, dissolving identities, exposing the fragile illusions we mistake for security. It takes away not to punish, but to purify. It strips the masks that once kept you safe, leaving you bare enough to feel your own essence again. The confusion, the grief, the exhaustion, they are not signs of failure. They are the sacred symptoms of rebirth. You are not falling apart. You are falling into alignment. So when everything begins to unravel, resist the instinct to run. Sit with it. Listen to what the silence beneath the noise is trying to say, because often that silence carries your next direction. Life is not punishing you. It is preparing you. Every ending is a disguised invitation, every loss a hidden threshold. The pain that feels unbearable now is shaping you into someone the old version of you could never have become. The question is not, why is this happening to me? But what is this trying to awaken within me? Because when you begin to see your breakdowns as doorways, your suffering transforms into strength, and the chaos becomes your initiation into wholeness. Have you ever noticed that just before something beautiful enters your life, something else falls apart? A relationship ends, a career path dissolves, your health falters, or an unexpected silence swallows your plans. In that void, you start to question everything. You ask, why now? Why me? But what if this collapse isn't chaos? What if it's choreography? Life rearranging itself to prepare you for what you've secretly prayed for. Carl Jung once said that the psyche will create the exact circumstances necessary for growth, no matter how painful they appear. Destruction, then, is not punishment. It is precision. When a tower falls, it does so because its foundation can no longer hold the weight of what's coming next. The same is true for you. Life begins to dismantle your false identities, your outdated dreams, and your survival-based attachments the moment your soul signals readiness for something deeper. The loss is not cruelty, it is calibration. The dismantling is deliberate. Think about the moments when everything you counted on stopped working. The friendship that quietly faded, the job that drained your spirit until it spit you out, the diagnosis that forced you to slow down. At first, you probably fought it. You clung to the old structure, praying it would hold just a little longer. But what if it wasn't supposed to? What if that job loss wasn't rejection, but protection? What if that heartbreak wasn't the end of love, but the end of distortion, clearing space for something more aligned with truth? The ego hates this process because it thrives on familiarity. It equates safety with sameness, even when sameness suffocates the soul. So when life begins its demolition, the ego panics. It tries to rebuild the old house even as the universe quietly burns it down. Jung taught that every transformation requires a symbolic death, the death of the known self. The caterpillar must dissolve into chaos before it can become the butterfly. That period of dissolution feels terrifying because all your reference points disappear. But in truth, nothing real is ever lost. Only illusions die. The deeper meaning of collapse is this: the universe is removing what cannot survive in your next chapter. It takes away not to deprive you, but to deliver you. Every delay is a redirection. Every closed door is protection from an old timeline that no longer matches your frequency. In Jungian psychology, this is called enantiodromia, the turning of things into their opposites. The breaking becomes the blessing. The ending becomes the entrance. The pain that once buried you becomes the very soil of your becoming. So the next time your life unravels, resist labeling it as failure. Pause, breathe, look closer. The destruction is sacred architecture, clearing the debris of what no longer resonates with your higher truth. You are not being rejected by life. You are being refined by it. And maybe, just maybe, this is the moment the universe has been waiting for. The moment you finally stop asking to be saved and start realizing that the collapse was your initiation into becoming whole. What if the greatest battle of your life isn't with the world outside, but with the voice inside that refuses to change? That voice that says, "I can't start over now," or "What if I fail again?" The truth is, the enemy isn't the circumstance, the betrayal, or the loss. It's the part of you still clinging to the illusion of control, still gripping the identity that no longer fits. Carl Jung said that the ego is terrified of transformation because it equates survival with sameness. So, when your soul begins to rise, your old self begins to fight back. You may not recognize this battle at first. It hides behind procrastination, self-doubt, and the constant need to explain or justify your choices. It whispers that staying safe is smarter than evolving. You begin to fear your own expansion, mistaking it for danger. Many people get stuck here, not because they lack vision, but because they lack permission to outgrow their old self. The unconscious clings to what is known, even if it hurts, because pain feels familiar, and familiarity feels like safety. That's why Jung called the ego the master of illusion. It convinces you that letting go will kill you, when in truth, holding on is what's keeping you small. Consider how many times you've sabotaged your own growth in subtle ways. You stay in a relationship long after it's drained you. You turn down new opportunities because they threaten your comfort zone. You convince yourself you're being patient when you're really being afraid. These are not random decisions. They are the strategies of the ego to protect itself from death. But here's the paradox. Transformation requires that death. The old self must dissolve for the true self to emerge. Just as a seed must crack open to become a tree, something within you must break open for life to expand. This inner resistance is not evil. It is simply outdated. It represents the psychological structures you built to survive, defenses formed in childhood, reinforced by society, and worshipped by the adult self. When life pushes you toward evolution, the ego interprets it as annihilation. It fights back with anxiety, fatigue, or overthinking, creating endless loops of self-sabotage. Jung called this process shadow confrontation, the painful recognition that what holds you back is not fate, but your own unconscious attachment to limitation. The healing begins when you stop fighting your evolution and start observing it. The next time you feel torn between the old and the new, ask yourself, who within me is afraid to let go? That question alone opens a doorway to awareness. Because once you can see the voice that resists change, you are no longer controlled by it. You begin to realize that the old identity served a purpose, but it no longer defines you. You are not betraying who you were. You are updating the vessel that carries your soul. This is the heart of individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. You are not here to kill your ego, but to integrate it, to bring light into the parts that still fear the dark, to recognize that the enemy was never out there, but within you, waiting to be understood. The moment you stop seeing that voice as your jailer and begin treating it as your student, your inner war ends. The energy once spent on resistance transforms into fuel for rebirth. So ask yourself, what part of you are you still defending, and is it really worth protecting? Because the life you want is not waiting outside your comfort zone, it's waiting beyond your old identity. And when you finally allow that identity to die, what remains is not loss, but liberation. What if the parts of you you've worked so hard to hide are the very keys to your healing? What if your breakdowns, your emotional outbursts, your quiet moments of shame were never flaws, but invitations? Life has a strange way of applying pressure at exactly the places where your armor is thinnest. But that pressure isn't punishment, it's a mirror. And in that mirror, everything you've repressed begins to reveal itself, not to shame you, but to free you. Have you ever noticed how when you're under stress, the old wounds resurface? You lose a job and suddenly you feel like a failure, not just today, but like the child who always thought they weren't good enough. Or maybe your partner pulls away emotionally, and instead of reacting as an adult, you begin to cling, to panic, to perform, just like you did when love felt conditional. These reactions aren't irrational. They are echoes. As Carl Jung taught, the unconscious isn't silent. It speaks in symbols, projections, and repeated patterns, and nothing makes it speak louder than pressure. The truth is, stress doesn't create your shadows. It simply brings them out of hiding. The people-pleasing tendencies, the fear of abandonment, the defensive pride, these are not personality flaws. They are survival strategies you developed when you didn't feel safe to be your full self. Shadow work, as Jung described it, is not about fixing yourself. It's about seeing what you've buried in order to survive and choosing, consciously, to integrate it. Because what you cannot own will quietly own you. The healing begins when you can sit with what emerges without trying to escape it. Instead of suppressing the anxiety, you ask it, what are you trying to protect? Instead of shaming the anger, you ask, what boundary was violated? This is not a weakness. This is deep, adult strength. Because only those brave enough to face their inner storms ever truly find peace beyond them. Take, for example, someone who always had to be the strong one in their family. Perhaps as a child, they learned that expressing sadness or fear made them a burden, so they became the helper, the fixer, the caretaker. But when life gets hard, this same person finds themselves burned out, resentful, and alone. Why? Because the shadow they buried, their own need to be held, has never been acknowledged. And so life keeps orchestrating situations where they are forced to confront it. Not to humiliate them, but to restore them. This is why so many midlife awakenings feel like crises. The facade can no longer hold, the identity built to win approval, avoid abandonment, or maintain peace begins to crumble. And as it does, the truth surfaces. This is not destruction, this is deliverance. Life is not trying to undo you, it's trying to uncover you. So the next time your reactions seem too big for the moment, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, What part of me is finally asking to be seen? Because once you shine light on what's hidden, the shame begins to loosen. And in its place, compassion blooms. The very traits you once hated in yourself, the sensitivity, the fear, the longing, become doorways to empathy, insight, and connection. You are not broken. You are becoming whole. The chaos you feel is not proof of failure, but evidence that something deeper is surfacing for healing. Jung reminded us that wholeness does not come from perfection, but from integration. So let this be the moment you stop hiding from yourself and begin seeing every fragment as sacred. You are not being tested to be punished. You are being revealed so you can finally return to your true self. What if the reason your life feels stuck is not because you are cursed or unlucky, but because part of you is still trying to survive the past? You say you want transformation, but are you truly willing to let go of the identity that formed in the fire of your old wounds? Most people aren't, not because they don't want joy, but because they are still emotionally tethered to who they had to become just to make it through. It happens quietly. You get the new job, but you still feel like an imposter. You meet someone kind, but you wait for the betrayal. You move to a new city for a fresh start, but find the same inner emptiness creeping back in. Why? Because your external reality cannot outpace your internal frequency. Carl Jung explained this as the unconscious shaping our reality through projection. Until you dissolve the identity built on pain, you will unconsciously recreate situations that validate it. You cannot walk into a new life while still dressed in the clothes of your past self. The universe does not respond to words, it responds to vibration. You may speak of transformation, but if your nervous system is still wired for threat, if your heart is still guarded by distrust, if your self-image is still molded by guilt or shame, then what you attract will mirror that signal. This is why healing is not a mental concept, it is a cellular process. It is rewriting the scripts your body memorized. It is grieving the version of you who never got to feel safe, even while celebrating the new version who is learning to receive love without fear. True change is not about adding more. It is about releasing the parts of you that are no longer in resonance with who you are becoming. Imagine a woman who spent years as the caretaker of everyone around her. Her worth was defined by usefulness. Her value was tied to sacrifice. When she finally sets a boundary or says no, her body trembles with guilt. Why? Because that old identity, the selfless one, has to die. And yet, in the ashes of that death, something miraculous begins. Space. Space for desire, space for joy, space for a self that doesn't need to be earned, only honored. Or think of a man who was raised to never show weakness. His whole life, he armored himself in logic, stoicism, and control. But inside, he is exhausted, disconnected, yearning. The moment he allows his emotions to surface, not to fix them, but to feel them, he starts to unravel the lie that his value is measured by performance. He, too, is dying to the old version of himself. And in that death, he finds his soul returning. Jung called this process individuation. It is not about becoming perfect, it is about becoming whole. The old death is not a tragedy. It is a sacred passage. Every pattern that breaks, every identity that dissolves, every illusion that crumbles is preparing you for alignment. You are not being punished. You are being purified. So the next time you find yourself frustrated, wondering why your life hasn't changed, ask yourself, have I truly changed? Not just in thought, but in embodiment? Have I allowed my nervous system to breathe differently, my relationships to flow differently, my heart to open to something unfamiliar? Because until the inner frequency shifts, the external world cannot meet you. This is the paradox of transformation. You do not attract what you deserve. You attract what you are. And to become someone new, you must be willing to grieve the roles that once protected you, but now confine you. This is not death. This is a rebirth. And the universe is not delaying your blessings. It is waiting for you to rise into the version of yourself who can receive them without fear. The moment you surrender what no longer resonates, life will begin to reflect who you truly are. Not because it finally changed, but because you did. What if the deepest turning point of your life is not triggered by a crisis, but by a quiet moment of unbearable honesty? Not the chaos of loss or the drama of endings, but the subtle, haunting realization that you can't keep living this way. It doesn't scream, it whispers. A soul-level ache that finally says, enough. That's when everything begins to shift. Not because the outside world changes, but because you do. You don't need more motivational quotes. You don't need another journal prompt, another book on transformation, another person to save you. What you need is a single moment of radical clarity, a moment when you stop lying to yourself, when the performance drops, when you stop pretending to be okay. Carl Jung called this the moment when the ego breaks open just enough for the self to enter, that deeper, eternal essence that holds your truth long after the masks fall away. This is not a dramatic awakening. It's not a lightning bolt. It's not screaming into the sky or quitting your job overnight. Sometimes it looks like a woman finally admitting she's exhausted from holding everyone together. Sometimes it's a man putting down the armor of success and whispering, "I don't even know what I feel anymore." These quiet confessions are not a weakness. They are soul revolutions. Because the real shift never comes from force. It comes from surrender. Think of the woman who has spent decades in a loveless marriage, convincing herself it's better for the kids, or that she doesn't deserve more. One evening, she stands in the kitchen, staring at the sink full of dishes, and for the first time in years, she doesn't cry. She just knows. Something has to change. That is her moment. Not loud, but sacred. Or the man who has built his entire life around being the provider. He has done everything right, paid the bills, built the house, been the rock. And yet, sitting in traffic on a Tuesday afternoon, something inside him whispers, "There's more to life than this." That whisper is not a breakdown, it is a breakthrough. Because when the soul speaks, it doesn't beg, it simply declares. Jung taught that the self, your true inner compass, emerges only when the false self becomes too heavy to carry. The ego resists this because it fears death. But the soul knows what feels like the end is really the beginning. That moment of enough is not about giving up. It's about finally choosing alignment over appearance, truth over tradition, wholeness over approval. The beauty is, once you reach this moment, you stop seeking permission. You no longer ask the world to validate your path. You don't wait for signs or synchronicities or perfect timing. You move, not from panic, but from peace. And this movement carries weight. Not the kind that forces outcomes, but the kind that magnetizes what belongs to you. This is why transformation often looks ordinary. A change in how you speak to yourself, a decision to stop chasing, a quiet detachment from chaos. And people around you may not even notice at first, but you'll feel it. Something inside you is unclenched. You're not trying to win anymore. You're just being who you are, without negotiation. So let me ask you, have you had that moment yet? The one where your soul whispers, "I'm done with this old story"? If not, are you listening for it? Can you feel where the tension in your life is not punishment but invitation? The discomfort is not here to destroy you. It is here to deliver you. When you say enough, you are not collapsing, you are returning, and every step you take after that becomes sacred. You are no longer moving from fear, you are moving from alignment. And that changes everything, because once the soul says yes, the universe cannot help but respond, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped pretending. What if you were never meant to prove yourself worthy, but to remember yourself whole? What if the trials, the waiting, the pressure, the cycles were never punishments, but invitations to become someone who no longer needs the lesson repeated? The truth is, life isn't testing your strength. It's revealing your coherence. Are you aligned with what you say you want, or are you still fragmented, still negotiating your worth with a world that reflects your uncertainty? This is the final paradox. The moment you stop grasping is the moment you begin receiving. The moment you stop chasing outcomes is when they quietly begin orbiting you. Because it was never about the outcome, it was always about who you had to become to receive it without losing yourself. The universe isn't keeping score, it's mirroring your signal. And your signal shifts the instant you drop performance and step into truth. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming whole, not perfect. This means owning every part of you, not just the curated image, but the wounds, the longings, the softness, the fire. When you are finally coherent, when your thoughts, actions, energy, and intentions all speak the same silent truth, you become magnetic to the very life you once begged for. Because you are no longer fragmented, you are no longer pretending. Think of the man who has spent years trying to manifest success, wearing hustle like a badge of honor, chasing goals out of fear of being nothing without them. One day, he stops. He doesn't give up. He lets go. He begins tending to his peace instead of his performance. Suddenly, opportunities come not from effort, but from ease. Not because he gave up the dream, but because he gave up the lie that he needed it to be somebody. Or the woman who believed love would arrive once she finally became less emotional, less intense, less herself. She shrank herself in relationships, bent herself to stay chosen. Until one morning she wakes and realizes the only person she's ever needed to choose her is herself. She begins to speak honestly, live slowly, and love without shrinking. And the love she once begged for arrives, not to complete her, but to mirror her new wholeness. This is the alchemy. You don't chase what you are. You attract it by becoming it. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. You are not being tested for strength. You are being asked to integrate, to bring all of you into the room, to stop asking life to be different and start becoming the version of you who no longer needs it to be. The journey does not end with applause. It ends in silence, a sacred pause where everything finally feels like it fits. You are no longer wrestling with your timing, your path, or your past. You are no longer negotiating your truth. You are simply living in resonance, and that resonance pulls the future to you. So I leave you with this. Who are you becoming now that you are no longer performing? What would happen if you stopped reaching and simply embodied the version of you who is already worthy? Not in some distant tomorrow, but now, in the breath you are taking as you read this. Because when the soul becomes whole, the story changes. And not because it had to, but because you finally did. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.